So questions, and I have, it's kind of half and half. This is stuff about just writing, and then the
Mhm.
other half is stuff that's about things that obviously influence your writing, but they're not necessarily writing. You redid your site, and I thought it looked really cool. I liked the photos,
Thank,
like antiquish looking stuff.
yeah, thank you. Thank
Where
you.
was that?
The first one on the homepage was a place called Sturbridge Village, and it's like a living history museum
Mhm.
from it's about the 1800s. Like they have
Yeah.
all these houses from all over New England that they've rescued, and they've been doing it since I want to say the 1930s. And these houses would be, up for demolition, and this historical society would bring them into this one location, and then they made a living history museum of it. And they have historians that dress up in the period pieces, and they're all doing things of the time of the house that they are in, and they will tell you about making soap or doing laundry or killing chickens or whatever it is you want to ask about what it was like to live back then. And my 7-year-old loves going there, so we go a couple times. So I'm very familiar with it. It's like there's not a lot new for me there. So yeah, the pictures kind of start getting a little strange and interesting after a while.
Totally unnecessary conversation. That was not one of my questions. That doesn't count. Tell me about the picture. That doesn't matter. I just thought it was cool. I went there last time I was there. It was very greenish, I think,
Yeah.
one site, and then I popped in and it was like this picture of you in the mirror and everything's getting old, and I was like, what the heck? It was cool. I liked it.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm still tinkering with it. It's not quite there yet, but we'll get there.
I'm not sure this should have been the first question. Like I wrote it down and then I was like, maybe I should reword this a little bit.
Okay.
So one of the things that I found interesting getting into the question, but when reading your blog posts and stuff, was reading about Hawaii's colonialism, which never knew. I didn't know much about. I know my knowledge, and I don't know why. Well, I do know why, but they just don't teach it. They don't teach a lot of things.
Right. Yeah.
But when I was a kid, I read up and learned a lot about colonialism and like westward expansion and crap. And the worst part was I was learning it. I was homeschooled, and I was learning it because I had found out that we had Cherokee heritage, and whereas I had been getting bullied for looking the wrong skin color because we're Irish American,
Mm.
and my siblings all look Irish, and I have a tan. And so it was like every summer they burned to a crisp, and then I got like 5 shades darker basically.
Yeah.
And so I was like way different. And but I didn't know we had Cherokee heritage for a while. And so I was kind of getting bullied there for a while, racist bullying there for a while. And then at some point my dad heard it, and then he kind of came down and was like, no, and gave me the whole spiel and gave me the family oral history, which was, you come from a woman who walked the Trail of Tears, and she started her family in Oklahoma, which is where his grandmother was from, and where his mom was from, and that because she was Cherokee, and she was forced through the migration to Oklahoma, to the reservation. And he's like, that's why you look the way you do. And it's like, it's something to be proud of. So that was huge, because by the time he finally said that, I had been getting enough of this bullying shit that like I was starting to feel effed up about myself. But it was like, so then that was like a whole other, I was still just a kid, but I was like, it was a whole like turning point for me, because I was like, oh, okay, So then I got obsessed with wanting to learn, about indigenous culture. And we went to the library like once or twice a week. And so it was like one of the, probably the best thing my mom did for us when we were homeschooling was just taking us to the library. But it was like, I started going into the history section and I would just be like, all right, book. Okay, it's about indigenous people. Let's go. And I was just checking out every book in the history section about indigenous people. But this was the 90s. This was the early 90s. And literally like every book was how the West was won. Go West, young man. And all this bullshit.
Yeah.
And it's like, no. And then, but I didn't know what I was getting myself into, And so I kept reading. And then basically over time, it's like every book is just, oh, look at that, a new treaty. Yeah. Oh, next page. Oh, yeah, they went back on the treaty. Okay, all right. Oh, okay. And it's like, and it's just constant like political bullshit where they're like, sure, yeah, we'll leave you alone. Oh, wait, there's gold? Get them all alone. You know what I mean? And just all the bullshit. And not to mention, all the other crazy, awful things. But it was just like, none of it was positive. None of it was about the culture. None of it. I didn't find a single book in that library about like indigenous culture or way of life or anything, which is what I wanted,
Mm-hmm.
And so it was just all that. And so I sure as hell didn't get, Hawaiian's colonialism. You know what I mean? The only reason why I was getting this colonialism story was because it was packaged as like, with the classic, what's the word I'm looking for? Manifest destiny perspective. So it was like, but I was smart enough to go, wow, that white side of my DNA is an asshole. It was like, I was able to figure that out. And then I felt weird because it was like the insides of me were boring. And it was like, Jesus. But then later I learned how the Irish were treated and was like, no, I was just, no. Because I'm Irish American. So it's like, yeah, there's no part of that DNA in me that wasn't mistreated back then. So that's a lot of blah, blah, blah. But to get to the point that was, I found that very fascinating. I don't have a lot of knowledge about it myself. And so that was one thing I wanted to dive into. And I imagine, honestly, probably most Americans that didn't grow up in Hawaii or with ancestry from Hawaii probably don't have good knowledge of it. So I kind of wanted to go there and like, and I know that's part of your writing. Like I wouldn't be asking you if it wasn't part of the DNA of your writing. But so the funny part is the question's really bad. Like this is like I don't know what I want to ask it this way. I just needed to get it on paper,
Okay.
But like this is horrible. Like, can you give us a brief overview of what colonialism looked like in Hawaii? Which is like, it's an okay question, I guess, but it's like talk about being put on the spot where it's like, tell us about what it looked like. But yeah, I mean, what
it is so complicated.
I mean,
I
know what it looked like here.
Yeah.
But I really have no idea what it looked like in Hawaii. And I'll let you go. Sorry.
So I think what people kind of see Hawaii as is just like a vacation place. And I think a lot of indigenous folks on the mainland don't really have that because they were displaced and put on a reservation, which may not have been prime real estate for the folks at the time. Whereas Hawaii is beautiful. It was beautiful, when Europeans kind of interacted with them at first. And I think that made things a little different. To how we think of like how the West was won, because the Hawaiian people kept their identity and they kept their power and they kept their monarchy a long ways into this imperialism that snuck its way in. So, everybody thinks of Captain Cook as being the one person that like broke into Hawaii, open to the world and made it accessible to everybody. But there had been, foreign folks that came and went from Hawaii before then. I think what happened, not to give the whole long history, but what happened is that as more people came in, a little bit of the culture would get robbed at a time. And so it wasn't like, I want to say, like, folks from the Mayflower, they landed and then boom, they had this whole, settlement and this whole colony. It was a little bit more insidious. And it involved whaling. And so there were folks coming in that were there for a little while and then they left to go find their whales. But then other industries kind of came in, like, whaling supplies and maybe lodging and things that go with the whaling industry. And more people kind of get entrenched into the island that were not from the island. And then, of course, you have the missionaries that followed and, we're trying to convert everybody, because it's not uncommon to see like indigenous people as being primitive or savage or unsavvy, and so you need these Western ways and these Western religions to guide you. That's a similar story, but I think part of the Hawaiian culture is being open and welcoming and incorporating ideas that make sense and that work. And I think one of the things that a lot of folks in Hawaii or with Hawaiian heritage understand is that the monarchy was very advanced. It had, I think, electricity before the White House. It had a free press. It had a lot of the things that we think about on the mainland as, culture. And they had these things well in advance, than people even like, throughout the US. So they took ideas that they thought would work for their people and that would enrich the lives of their people. But unfortunately, you have these folks like Dole, the pineapple guy, who had a lot of stake in the plantations there and really formed the coup that would overthrow the government. And whereas the monarchy would, work with folks. There were some things, it's so hard to like give you a snapshot without like going into this long dissertation of these things that have happened. But one of the big things that did happen was to open up land ownership to foreign folks. And these were a lot of the plantation people like Dole, but there were many others. And really, once that happened, it was that slippery slope that kind of, toppled the monarchy and eventually led to annexation to the US. So it was a long, slow process where I feel like sometimes the indigenous folks on the mainland US, like, it was brutal and it was immediate. It wasn't this integration and then like how things got just taken over, so I think those are some of the differences. And then, with Hawaii, the language was banned, their customs like hula were banned, and a lot of Hawaiian traditions were oral or were in the form of dance. And I think one of the things that I point out in my website is that when you ban a language and you ban your storytelling, you lose your history, because so many of the things were kept in oral traditions, like your genealogy. There would be chants of like who, was related to who. And when those things go away, it's always the common people who get, cut out first. If you're not important enough to write down or keep a record of, your history goes away when there is no way to communicate that, which, doing my own genealogy, it's been really, you get a hard stop. Like, there is a point in time where there is nothing to be found. And I think that, for me, it's frustrating, but I can imagine like for so many people, it just you realize how sad that is. And, that is due to colonialism,
Right.
So
we talking about the ancestor on my end, it's like, as I said it was like my dad passed the family oral history down to me about her. because there's no documentation about her. All we know about her is just what we've been passing down. You know, we know she was forced to travel the trail. In my opinion, I think she was a kid when she did it because she didn't start a family until Oklahoma. So I suspect she was young enough that she wasn't bearing children yet. Because I don't think she didn't start a family. From what I understand, she didn't actually start a family until Oklahoma. So, which just makes it all the more ridiculous to think about that she was probably a child when she was forced to walk. And but yeah, it's like you say, it's like there's no written anything. Plus, they tried so hard to break down all that culture, you know, the oral telling, the storytelling, to where you're just going, you know, all I know is for a fact is that she existed according to my family. She was forced to walk the Trail of Tears. And then our family, you know, when you trace back, it goes back to Oklahoma, right? Mm-hmm. That's where it goes, you know? And it's like, because that's where she started it. And it's like, but that's like it in terms of any sort of like, and that's still just oral. Like, I don't have like documentation of like her. I don't think I even have documentation of her existing, you know what I mean? At all. And it's just like, it's just crazy. But it's like, but that's, you know, that's the damage, like you're saying, of that sort of thing. Well, it's genocide, but when you just start destroying the culture of a people, a lot of people, probably mostly white people, but think genocide is just, I don't know, did you put them all in a room and gas them? You know, like that's their idea of genocide. You know, it's like, no, it's much more than that. Like there's so many other things. I mean, you can destroy an entire group of people by just completely stripping them of their identity,
right?
Their language, their way of life, their culture, their dance, their traditions, their religion, their hair, you know what I mean? Like where it's like, no, you can't have that hair. You're a guy, you gotta hack it off, and oh my gosh, put something over that chest, you know. Here, put this suit on, you know. And it's like, and carry this Bible, you know, and it's just like, come on, you know. And before you know it, it's like, well, where you left with, you know. But it's just wild. And you're telling me stuff. Okay, I have to ask, what the fuck did Dole do?
So
I have to know. That's like follow-up question number one. What the fuck?
So
you said you brought him up and you implied some things, and I'm going, oh my God, what did this fucker do?
Yeah.
I don't know the history.
There is still the Dole Plantation in Hawaii to this day. You can go visit it as a tourist. They still grow some pineapple there, although most of their pineapple that you get at the grocery store, whether it's canned or fresh or whatever, that does not come from Hawaii anymore. But they still have the plantation. It is a tourist trap. If you've ever seen a tourist trap, you go in and you're immediately in the gift shop and you can buy any tchotchke you can imagine with a pineapple on it. You can get a Dole Whip, which is delicious. I'm not going to knock that. That is
a what now?
A Dole Whip. It's like a pineapple ice cream thing. So you can take a train ride through the plantation. We have done all of the things my whole entire life, the touristy things and the normal things. We have done them all. So yes, the Dole Plantation. My grandmother worked at the Dole Plantation when it was an actual plantation, cutting pineapples and sticking them in a can. But yeah, going way back to when Dole himself, Dole the man, was in Hawaii. He gained power and influence by acquiring land, and not just pineapple plantations, but sugar cane plantation. He had a lot going on, and so he had a lot of interest in the monarchy not being the monarchy and having westward interests controlling Hawaii, because that would benefit him. So yeah, there is a lot there's a lot of history about Dole. And you know, it does, you know, I can't say like, oh, it was so terrible, because as I said, my grandmother, that's how she made her living. It's how she took care of her kids. Like, she had a job at this factory and she had 6 children. My mom was the oldest of the 6. So, you know, I do hear all these stories about her life from my mom. And it was a hard job, and she'd have acid burns all up her arm from the acid in the pineapple. But a lot of people, you know, in her generation, that's where they worked. So yeah, I mean, it's one of those things. It makes me think, and this is kind of going off on a tangent, so I apologize, but it does make me think of Meta and, you know, Zuckerberg and his interests in Hawaii. He's I don't know if you've heard, but he has now like this whole compound and a bunker, I guess. And he's got all of this land, acres and acres of land. And one of the problems with Hawaii is that there is not enough land to go around for the folks that live there. And on his land, he's got the bones of somebody's ancestors. And, you know, whether he grants or restricts them access to that, you know, is gross to me. Like, it's just gross. But at the same time, I use Meta products. I have been on Instagram. I've been on Threads. So, you know, it's one of those things, like, how can you use his assets to kind of not let him profit from it, but somehow get your message across of the things that you want to talk about that might be related to things he's doing. And I feel like there's this connection with Dole. Like, in his day, yes, he provided something that people like my grandmother could make money and support a family with. But like, oh, I wish he wasn't ever there. I wish there was something else that she would have done to make a better life for her and her family. But at the same time, that was there for her. So it's complicated.
But let's come back to this one. Let's hit your writing for a bit. Let's go specifically into your writing for a bit. Let's start with Gill's Authentic Colonial Cider.
Yes.
First off, I love the title. But secondly, that's a short story, right?
It is a short story. There was a call for submissions in the late summer for a fall anthology, and of course I didn't finish it in time, but I am still, it's on the back shelf. And I think that, you know, my novels, they're, you know, I think that I'm going to have 4 in a series. So, but they all take place on the Hawaiian side. But Gill's takes place in New England, in Western Massachusetts, where I am from. And it kind of explores some of the themes from my novels just in quirkier ways. And it's basically about a guy who, his family has been making cider in the area for years and years, and his orchard goes bust. And so he's desperate because he's about to lose everything he has. And then these mysterious apples at the edge of his property pop up. And the cider that he makes from them, the people that drink it, there's some unusual side effects, we'll just say. So that's what that one's about.
I learned something about myself while I was taking notes.
Yeah.
I do not know how to spell Massachusetts. I was like,
capital M, capital A. You're good.
I like that one. So what are you planning to do with it then, since you missed your?
So yeah, I think like I have another short story submission I'm plugging away on with a deadline in February. So that's kind of like the thing that I've shifted my focus to. Gills will be back at some point, and I'll finish that one up. And then I'm working on the second novel in my series too. So those are the things that I've got juggling right now. But yeah, so I'll get back to Gill Cider I don't know. Definitely in 2026 at some point.
Let's do, so within thin places,
Mhm.
that's in beta. That's where that's at. I was trying to remember what that was. Yeah.
Yeah, so I did get I haven't updated my website in a little bit, but yes, I've gotten some feedback from my beta readers, and it is now in the hands of my agent, and hopefully, like, she will say what needs to get changed, what needs to be fixed to be marketable, and then hopefully she can sell it. I hope after more edits.
And that's the one that's gonna be the 4-part.
Yeah, I
Probably.
think so. I think so. I have outlines for the next 3 novels after that one, so I think it'll stop at 4. I think I will have run out of ideas for at 4 and move on.
Yeah, it's writing a series is interesting, like, because I'm writing one too. The thing about mine is it's like when I was working on the even just the first novel, I was like I was also just spitting ideas, for other ones. And it was like, and I started making a list. And at a certain point, I had a list of like 15 book ideas.
Wow.
15.
Mm.
And it wasn't even all of them. Like I knew that there had to be some other ones to fit in some other story stuff, you know. And I'm going, gee. Plus, when you write as you go, you're like, oh, I have this other thing, and you know what I mean. Like that's
Yeah.
just the early. That's just me going. These are plots that I want to do early on, not like you're further on and you know where you're at, and you know what I mean. Because then further you go, oh, there's this interesting thing. I want to go explore that, And it's like that's 15 without that, And I'm going, geez.
Yeah.
So like after I finished, as I was wrapping up Jonah, I was like looking at that laundry list, and I was just like, I'm too old for this shit. Like I'm not gonna make it. Like I'm too slow of a writer, and I'm too old. It's like I don't think I can write that long of a series, especially because it's like I have other stories to tell. You know what I mean? So it's like I don't know that I have that many years left in me to be able to write a 15-book series plus other stuff. So I was like, and I definitely want to finish the series. And so it's like, and I do know how it is, but I'm not saying anything. Too early. But so I'm looking at it and I was like, here's what I need to do. I need to start, and this is something I've learned a long time ago in general, was it's like that sometimes if you have, well, let's put it this way. I used to think when I was really like in my early 20s, I would think, ooh, I have this really great idea. And then I'd be like, let's go write it. And it's like, and then you'd be like, it's like mediocre, maybe. And then at some point I realized, you know what? A good story, especially like a film, like a good film, which is the story, but like isn't made up of one good idea. You have to have like a bunch of good ideas. You know what I mean? And it's like, and it's funny because like, and I at the time I thought of Hitchcock, because like Hitchcock movies, he would do that sometimes. Like he would have a movie that would be built around one crazy cool idea he had, you know, but the rest of it was still good too. You
Yeah.
know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, it wasn't just that one scene. Like if you would have watched the whole movie just going, oh God, this is so what? And then you get to the end of the movie and they're fighting on the Statue of Liberty, and you're going, what the fuck? And it's crazy, and you're like, this is insane. And it's like, but that's where you end up with like, critiques of stories or movies being, well, it was a good idea, but and it had like one or two good ideas, but it was just kind of most of it was just kind of meh. So yeah, good old series writing. So the next time we talk, you'll be like, I'm up to 12. No, I hope not. It'll be 12, but how did you feel like about doing it? Was that your first beta? Let me ask that. Had you done one before?
I will say for a novel, yes. I started writing with a friend who I still write with to this day, 20 years ago on a novel. And I did finish it. It's terrible. I think, like you said, there's one good idea in there, and it's been on
The
a
fight
back
scene
shelf
on the
for,
Statue of Liberty.
well, it totally is, yes.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to be the fourth book in my series. So that's like the book I started out writing when I was just an idiot with a tiny laptop, and hopefully, like by the time I get to number 4 at the end of the series, like it'll be full circle and it'll be much better.
Here's the deep writing question.
Okay.
Why do you write?
Oh yeah. I think for me, writing is a way of kind of just exploring like existential questions. Why are we? And who are we? And what do we become when we cease to exist? And I think everything that I have written has followed that thread. I don't think I've ever wrote non-horror. I think horror for me is a way to explore those subjects with a lot of metaphor. I think so. And metaphor is really intriguing to me about, what symbols stand for things that we struggle with. So yeah, it's understanding life and death and identity and connection and disconnection, which I think I definitely have felt in my own life. So yeah, that first book I mentioned, it was about what happens after we die and where do we go and what are the struggles that we have to continue with, because you don't end up being enlightened just because you don't have a body. Like, you still have your things to work through, and when all of that goes wrong there, like, then what do you do? So I don't think I was experienced in life enough to be able to write a book like that, which is probably why I rewrote it so many times. Um, but yes, that I would say that impulse to try and figure out why we exist is kind of what propels me to write. Yeah.
Your blog post, author's note.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to quote you for a second. You're like, wait, what?
What did I say?
Right. Feelings, and you're talking about being Indigenous here, but feelings of not belonging, of being the problem, of wondering if we're enough, are familiar to many people of Native heritage, especially those who have been scattered by displacement, colonial erasure, and mixed identity. And my question on that would be, can you expound on that a little bit? Like, as if you were talking to somebody who doesn't understand that.
Yeah. So I think, to make
Like,
it more personal, like if I'm not talking about this in a more abstract way, like the author's note, I do think, like, even you reading that back to me, oh, my psychological training is saying, like, I'm distancing myself, even talking about it in that quote, in that way. I feel like this is a personal book. I don't think any of the characters in this book are me, although a piece of me is in each of one of them, and they all are dealing with this kind of identity that quote kind of encompasses. But for me in particular, all of my heritage on my Hawaiian side is very mixed. And I think that there is this struggle to, like, be able to claim your own heritage without being judged for what you look like. And I'm very pale. I have green eyes. I don't fit like, you look like a Hawaiian person, or a person of Hawaiian descent. I look like my Italian side of the family. I look like my dad. So, yeah, I don't. But I don't know that that alone says you are allowed to explore your own heritage and your own feelings about that. And I think that that is a lot of what my characters, question throughout the novel. For my main character, Lydia, she's born in New York, and that is a place to me that is like the furthest from Aloha. Like there is like the cultural difference is just night and day between New York and Hawaii. But obviously she has her father's from, they all have very deep roots. And I think that when you have the separation of one not being born in the same place as your parents, well, my mother, that, you do, as much as she has tried to educate me in the history and the culture and our people and who our relatives are and who we are, like all the pictures of my cousins, there are 17 of us, and I think like I am the whitest looking one. And it's like we all have the same blood quotient, if you want to say like, well, you're this much or you're that much, you're more, you're less. We're all the same. It's just depending who my aunts and uncles married, like it determines like how Hawaiian or not we look. And I think that even starting to write this book, I was nervous about being criticized or being told I wasn't allowed to write about this kind of topic, because I wasn't Hawaiian enough. And as I wrote this book, I really started to question, like, what does that mean? Like, why would I care if somebody else said that to me? And in the end, I don't really care. And this isn't a book about like a main character who is trying to be more Hawaiian. She's really looking through her identity in a way to connect to her father and her grandmother and all of the people that came before her in order to try and figure out herself and her traumas. And I think that's really what I was exploring, is the generational trauma that I can see that comes from being an Indigenous Hawaiian person through generation after generation after generation. And it doesn't matter, if at the end of that chain, I look the way I look, like these are still my people, and these are still the things that we went through, and those traumas that my grandmother went through, that her mother went through, that my mother went through, are still things that I am dealing with. And I think it wasn't until a little bit later in life that I really understood that idea of generational trauma and how identity and colonialism played a part in that for so long. So some people might say, yeah, well, you benefit from being as Caucasian as you look, and you don't have the same struggles that we have. And I'm not saying that I do. That's not my stance. I'm not saying that. I think people, definitely have their own stories to tell, and I'm not looking to tell somebody else's story. But yeah, I think I'm coming all over the place with this answer. I think that that quote is kind of at the heart of my own struggle with identity, and really being able to claim my own family, like that, like feeling judged for doing that in a way, and kind of working through that too.
There was a lot of when I read that originally, and it was like, I don't remember what it was, but I left you a comment way back in the day, or messaged you about it, something way back in the day when you posted it. But it was like, there was a lot in that where I I had similar feelings about certain things, you know. Now the interesting thing about it to me was like I had growing up, there were things I went through, you know. And even now, like there's still things that like I'm like the enough thing is an interesting, you know, thing that gets you. But um the interesting thing about it was I didn't realize like I don't think I realized that a lot of the things I thought of as a kid or felt as a kid, I don't want to say typical, but they were things that other people with this sort of ancestry have as well. And I
Mhm.
didn't even I thought it was just like, oh, you know, I had a pretty traumatic childhood anyway. So it's no wonder I thought a lot of bad things, you know. So I didn't really think much of it, but it was like um it really wasn't until have you read this?
No, I haven't. Nope.
There by Tommy Orange. Okay. So here you can borrow it. Damn it. All right. I don't have any more questions. I did the follow-ups already. And if this didn't record, I'm gonna be very mad.